Welcome to another edition of the Membership World podcast. My name is Gordon Glenister. Now, in this podcast series, you will hear me interview all sorts of people from the world of membership bodies and trade associations. But before we start, please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast series just to make sure that you don't miss a future episode. Now, in today's edition, I'm talking with speaking industry guru Maria Franzoni, who ran her own speaker bureau for many years and now runs her own program for professional speakers. So I started by asking her a little bit about what she's been up to right now. Welcome to another edition of the Membership World podcast, and I am delighted to be welcoming my very good friend and international global speaker guru, otherwise known as Maria Franzoni. Lovely to see you with me today, Maria.
Oh, I like to do a bit of guruing. Thank you for that. I pinched that from Jeff Birch, by the way. He says he goes guruing.
Guruing. Oh, that's great. So today we're going to really talking about, obviously a lot of people that listen to the Membership World podcast are interested in booking speakers for conferences and all sorts of events. So I'm really keen to get some insights from you because obviously this is an area that you're very familiar with. Perhaps before we get into some of the nuggets, tell us a little bit about you and your background, just to give a sense of perspective.
Okay, so I suppose the relevant piece of my background is the time I've spent in the speaking industry, because I also had several careers before that. I'm not very young, I'm afraid. So I spent 23 years in the speaking industry working in speaker bureaus. For the last 14 of those years, I actually ran my own speaker bureau, and they were genuinely international. We worked with speakers from all over the world, with clients from over the world, with some very big names. My Little Black Book is fantastic, and I got to work with the most incredible clients and incredible speakers. So very privileged. And now I'm actually training speakers and helping them to grow their speaking businesses, helping them to get more bookings and charge higher fees.
Brilliant. Excellent. The most important question probably is, when deciding, what speaker to go for, as an event organizer, what would you best advise?
Okay, so your knee-jerk reaction is to obviously come up with a theme, which absolutely you should do. And hopefully an objective, and you've got your audience in mind. But the knee-jerk reaction is to always start coming up with names. And I ask you and challenge you not to do that, because in doing that, you could take yourself down the wrong route. And what you're also doing is you've probably got a limited number of names that you know, unless you are working with speakers day in, day out. So don't do that. So what I recommend, and this actually came from when I started in the industry, I started working at CSA Celebrity Speakers. And Alex Krywald trained me. He was the founder, genius, no longer with us, but absolute genius in the business. And he always said, whatever the topic is, rather than coming up with names, think about who would be best to actually deal with that topic. What background, what profile would be best, so that you think outside the box. So let's take an example. So maybe you've got a topic of, thinking under pressure or making decisions under pressure. And if you're trying to think of names, you're probably quite limited. But if you then go outside the box and say, well, who has to think under pressure on a regular basis? A bomb disposal expert, a hostage negotiator, an athlete defending their title, a psychologist, a surgeon, a mindset expert. You can go on and on and on, expanding that, and you can have so much fun. And then you probably be a bit more creative about who you choose, and you've got more flexibility.
I love that. That's really good. Yeah, sort of a hostage negotiator. Why would you not want to have somebody like that? Because yes, it's still negotiation, but the storytelling behind that would be absolutely fascinating, wouldn't it? But how much lead time? Because I'm guessing some of these big speakers are very popular and booked out quite a lot of the time. How much lead time do you reckon an organizer should be thinking about?
So the longer you give in terms of lead time, the better choice you're going to have. And actually, in many cases, you can probably negotiate a bit better, because if you can imagine, if you reach out to a speaker, or if you do it via a speaker bureau, and that speaker in 6 months' time hasn't got anything in the diary, they're probably quite keen to put something in the diary. Whereas if it's like in the next 3 or 4 weeks, they probably won't have so much space and may not be as flexible on fees and things, for example. So I would say give the longer lead time you can give, the better choice you will have, because people are more likely to be available, and they're also more likely to sort of think about, well, actually, I haven't got anything in the diary. I'll probably accept that. So a lot of my clients who had an annual conference, literally as soon as they finish the conference, they have a rest, they have a holiday because they're always exhausted, and then they start planning the next one straight away. And they even start advertising it straight away. Some of them will book the speaker before the conference so they can advertise next year's speaker at the actual conference. You don't have to go crazy like that, but if you can give it a few months, you're more likely to have more choice.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, I guess, but how do you know that you've got a good one? I mean, I've been a conference organizer and booked speakers many times over the years, and a lot of it is by word of mouth and reputation. And I often find that one person knows somebody else, and that person knows somebody else. But I guess how do you know they're really going to deliver, particularly if they're charging a fair amount of money?
Yeah, and that's the $64,000, or is it $64 million? It's a big question, right? That's the big question. How do you know if you've never booked this person before? I think you need to do some homework so that you can stack the odds in your favor. And in terms of doing homework, I would get testimonials, obviously, but actually ask to speak to a previous client if you're spending a lot of money. Why not? Ask to speak to a previous booker. Use a bureau, because a bureau, I don't know if you're aware, bureaus don't actually pay the speakers before they've spoken. So that if something happens that the speaker gets ill, they will guarantee to replace that speaker. If the speaker doesn't do a good job, you've actually got some kind of opportunity of either getting some money back, although of course by then that's not what you want. It's not a scenario that you want. But
No.
most speaker bureaus won't put a speaker in unless they know they're going to do a great job, because, and they'll match them very carefully, because their reputation is based on the last gig that they've done.
Absolutely.
So
Not just the speaker, but the bureau as well.
absolutely, the bureau as well.
Yeah.
And the speaker, will be reluctant to accept a gig from a bureau that they work with a lot if it's not right as well, because they will ruin their chances. So testimonials, speak to previous bookers, use a bureau, watch videos, and brief them very, very carefully.
I mean, it's interesting, although not necessarily a speaker, I've seen people absolutely die on stage, and admittedly, they were somewhat in the entertainment industry, but there was a real mismatch with the audience, and the act or the entertainment was just so not right at all. And yet, in their own sphere, they were hugely successful. Do you know what I mean? And these are well-known entertainers, comedians actually in many ways, but at this particular awards night, they bombed.
I've actually witnessed a comedian, it wasn't one that I had booked, I have to say, who did exactly that at an event, and he stopped doing corporates. I won't mention names, but he stopped
Yeah,
doing corporates after that. And you're absolutely right. It's that matching. You've got to think it's not who you like as the booker,
yeah,
it's who your audience will appreciate.
absolutely.
Always, everything's always about the audience.
No, I totally agree with you, because in this particular instance, I'm sure this comedian, for example, is very, very popular with the people that want to go and see him and have paid. But of course, what they will have done at this awards evening is paid to see the awards and have some form of entertainment. But of course, in that audience, you've not necessarily got your immediate fan base. So getting that message right, or that communication, is so important. And also the length of the presentation time is a big thing, isn't it? Now, I wondered, if that's changed over the years. Has it got shorter and punchier, or what?
It has got shorter, and I think the TED Talks have had an enormous influence on that. And a lot
Yeah.
of clients, when I was running my bureau, would say, "Oh, we want a TED style talk. We want a 15-minute, 20-minute." They're actually harder for a speaker to deliver than the longer speeches, because it's often harder to know what to take out. And when you have more time, it's a lot easier to ensure that you've got all your messaging in there. So sometimes clients are surprised when, if they say, well, it's only 15 minutes, it should be cheaper. Actually, more often than not, it's much harder preparation for a speaker to reduce it down, make it
Yeah.
impactful.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, again, somebody's spending, let's just say, £10,000 on a speaker, which is a reasonable amount of investment. What extra value can they get from that speaker?
So there's lots of things you can do with a speaker, but you need to agree all up front. So you can't sort of add things on after you've done the contract and agreed the fee. So you need to check that they're open to doing different things for you. So you could ask them maybe to do a promo video clip for you on their iPhone or on. I mean, everybody's good at virtual now, or certainly the professionally paid speakers getting 10 grand should be, right? So you could ask them to do a little video clip, which will allow you to then share it on your social media, on your website. That would help. I mean, the obvious things is to add things like Q&A, which if it's a keynote, you might not want to add it immediately after. You might add it at a different time so you don't lose the impact. Or you might ask them to do a panel because they're there anyway.
Sure.
But as I said, ask them to do it beforehand, because if you do it afterwards, they might have arranged their travel, they might have arranged different things, they might have accepted a different gig. They might want to charge you more if you add it on. Discounts on books. Always, if somebody's speaking, ask them, can they throw in some books for your VIPs? Will they dedicate them? What can they give you something as a follow-up that they can share with your audience afterwards so that you get some extra value? So there's lots of things that you can do, but always agree them up front and make it part of the contract.
Yeah, yeah. And presumably, do you provide help and assistance with people that perhaps haven't had contracts before? I guess that's all part of what you do as a bureau, because the contract is contract is with you, isn't it? And then you contract the speaker.
Well, first of all, please be clear that I don't run my bureau anymore. I
Of course
closed
you.
my bureau.
Oh,
But a bureau handles all the contracting, and that's another reason to use a bureau. A bureau will save you so much time. They'll handle all the contract they'll do the negotiation. They'll check any technical requirements or any riders, which a lot of comedians and entertainers have quite complicated riders. So they'll make sure that that's all clear up front before it's signed off. So yeah, the bureau will take a lot of the legwork out because it's incredibly time consuming.
yeah, no, absolutely. And so, what sort of information will help your speaker sort of get it right for your event?
So probably the most important information is about that audience. Who are they? What's going on for them? What does that client want them to be feeling or thinking or doing as a result of the speaker being there? What does success look like? So they're totally clear. What's worked well in the past for them, for that audience, so that they know what works, what hasn't worked well, what don't they like, what should they avoid. So as much information as you can give in terms of how they can be successful and where the audience are at. It's really vital to know, if you're going to go on as a motivational speaker, to know that perhaps half the audience are going to be fired, or let go in the next couple of months, because you need to know that that's where they're at, so that
Quite.
are you with me?
Yeah.
Or if they've had a fantastic year and they're celebrating, or you need to understand, or they've been a team and that's been struggling because they've all been working remotely for 2 years and they haven't seen each other. So as much information that you can give as to where are they going to be in their heads when they arrive, it really helps.
Also, I was just going to ask you about sort of time that they might go in. Let's just say, for example, an awards evening. If things are running late or the speaker is coming on later in the evening, you could find shall I say, the relaxed atmosphere is far greater. A classic after dinner speaker I was actually almost referring to. And how does that work in an environment where the audience are talking and creating? And I've certainly witnessed that when people are presenting awards. Everybody likes to receive an award until it's somebody else's.
Yeah, awards events are really hard.
They are, aren't they? I mean, I once went to one awards and it was 52 awards in one evening. 52
Gosh.
awards. Can you believe it? I mean, it was really, painful.
The best awards hosts are the ones that can really get that pace going really fast and
Definitely.
get it through, and and then they do the comedy in between if they're comedians, and they make it a really fun night. And there's
Yes.
not that many that are really excellent at it, but those that really excel know how to keep that pace, because you have to. If it's drawn out, it's like, oh my goodness. So with regards to timing, again, you have to. It's that matching thing. Many speakers don't work well after dinner. It's not the right slot. Some content won't work well after dinner. And there were many times when I ran my bureau that clients wanted a business speech shorter business speech, but they wanted it at dinner. And I always said to them, listen, there's no problem you doing that, but don't do it after dinner. When people have had some food, they've had some wine, they
Exactly.
don't really want to listen to a business speech. Do it before dinner, or do it between the starter and the main. And you can always do Q&A at the end if you want to do that, if you want to have that speaker stay. But the other thing is, don't expect a speaker to sit through dinner and then speak after dinner, because they can't really have a relaxed conversation. They can't give their material away. So it's a very stilted and difficult conversation to have. So I would always say, have the speaker come in after. There are a few exceptions. There are a few exceptions who literally write the speech based on the conversation they have at the table. Those guys are
Wow.
I mean, Ken Livingstone does that. You could see him with his napkin making notes, and then he'll deliver a speech, and it's so perfect
Wow.
for that audience. It's a huge, enormous skill, enormous
Yeah.
skill.
I just talking back to comedians. Once I sat on the top table, and at the time I was the director general of a trade association, and I thought, what a lovely guy, and I knew he was the compere, but thought nothing of it. And of course, thou shalt never sit next to the compare comedian ever again, because it just plays to what you've just said. I appeared in his speech to somewhat ridicule at times, and of course the audience fell about laughing. It was quite funny actually, like looking back.
And that's good. He did a good job.
Yeah, no, he did. He really did. I mean, are there any sort of speakers that have really stood out? I mean, you've worked with some amazing people, you've said, that have really had maybe standing ovations, or had people emotionally affected, tear-jerking ones. What are the sort of standout speakers that you can recall?
I hate this question because I get into so much trouble. I've worked with so many speakers, and all of them are brilliant because they tailor.
Yes.
Um, are you really going to put me on the spot and to ask me who's moved me emotionally? You are, aren't
I,
you?
I'm absolutely going to do that because I want to get.
Okay, I
I
wish
want.
you'd prepared me for this. Okay, let me give you two or three. Let me give you two or three. So one who's no longer with us and was my favorite speaker of all time, actually, and I'm allowed to say that because he's no longer with us, and that was Neil Armstrong. He
Oh wow.
absolutely was incredible, and the reason Neil was incredible, he took on very few speeches, and he spent a crazy amount of time preparing. Every single speech was totally and utterly unique, totally tailored. And because he was super, super bright, super intelligent, they were brilliant. And he didn't talk about the moon landing, which people would be surprised at. Fabulous speaker. And he took his time to stay at the end and shake everybody's hand
Wow.
and have photos with them. So that was phenomenal and phenomenally generous.
Mm.
So he was one. One that moved me to tears, and the reason I remember this specifically is because I actually went to the client event, and I'd seen him speak before, but I was ended up sitting with my client next to her, and we were both bawling our eyes out. So it was incredibly embarrassing,
Wow.
and that was Mark Pollock. I don't know if you know him. So Mark Pollock, um, you know, happy young man, everything to live for, bit of an athlete, and in his early 20s lost his eyesight. Not deterred, he became an explorer, he was still an athlete, and then not that long ago he was at an event with some friends. He decided to go home. I think it was Henley actually. I'm not entirely sure, but anyway, he decided to go back to their place. He was staying at their home early, and he was going from the bedroom to the bathroom, and he was feeling along the wall to get to it was in the summer, getting to the bathroom, and the window was open and he fell through, and he ended up paralyzed from the chest down.
Oh my God.
So this sort of really changes your life completely, and he's one of the most incredible, phenomenal people, absolutely phenomenal, really motivational. His story is incredible, not bitter, not a victim, just inspirational, had us in tears. His story is beautiful, and he's now working with bionic legs, and I don't think they're called that, but these legs that you
So does that,
attach.
I know. So does that? How does he come on stage then? He.
Well, sometimes he'll come on using the legs, and sometimes, and a lot of the time he'll come on in his wheelchair. But he's another one. And then let's do a happy one. one, right? I think we need
Yes.
to end on a happy one. Somebody who always makes me absolutely cry with laughter. I've seen him so many times. I will never be bored of hearing his stories. He's a complete lunatic and I love him. And that's Sir Ranulph Fiennes.
Oh, really? Wow.
Hilarious. His stories are phenomenal, that he relates them beautifully to business. But he personally has just got funny bones.
Right, that's good to hear. That's good to hear, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the reason I ask you that is because you've worked with so many interesting people, and I think, if you're an event organizer, is what makes an interesting speaker. You are often, if you've got a great speaker, it's actually, it will help people bring people to your event sometimes, won't it? More often than not, the caliber of the speaker, I think, sets the tone of the conference or the awards or the actual event more than anything else. So amazing, lovely. I guess the only other thing I wanted to ask you to finish with is who motivates you, and I've somewhat involved in the influencer space as well. Who's had a big impact on your life?
Oh my goodness, these are big questions. Who motivates me now? It's
Yes.
actually the people that I'm working with. I find them incredible. The people I work with are really highly motivated. They're really keen to succeed. They're like sponges absorbing information, and they just, go out and do it and go out and get it done. And I find that incredibly motivating. So I actually get more motivated by the people that I'm working with. And
Mm,
my team are incredibly motivational, very supportive.
yes.
So I've got a team of now I've got a smaller team than I had before, and it's ended up being a team of females. So my team, Mary and Sian and Audrey, phenomenally motivational. So it's not really an external one, but I do enjoy listening to speeches, of course. But I actually find that I'm getting a lot of, actually, you'll find this too. A lot of my guests on podcasts are very good to motivate me. I did 2 recordings this week for Speakers Associates, one of the speaker bureaus I host their podcast, and both of them, the speakers, were just phenomenal. And I was like, whoa, all day I was on fire. So they were great.
Well, you're a bit like me. You're a people person, aren't you? You get your energy as much from other people as much as anything else, and I hear you totally. We were just talking before we recorded this podcast about what it's like to work with people on a one-to-one basis, and it's such a great experience, isn't it? When you see, and particularly when you think that you've impacted them in some way by what you're saying and what you've done and everything else. So, well, I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure, as I expected it would be, to talk to you today, Maria, and all the best with your speaker program.
Thank you.
Actually, just before we finish, Maria, how can people find out about you?
Well, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I am Maria Franzoni there, or on Facebook. So probably best. And also I have my website is mariafranzoni.me.
Got me. Okay, great. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
That's it for another edition of Membership World. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and give me your feedback. hello@membershipworld.co.uk, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram or Twitter, where you can also ask me a question. And lastly, if you do feel like it, please give us a 5-star rating, as this helps the show enormously. That thanks as always to my producer Neil Whiteside from Freedom One. And until next time, from me, Gordon Glenister, it's bye for now.